Welcome back. This is the 17th annual Isaac Asimov panel debate, and we've been going strong ever since the year 2000, when an idea surfaced in the hearts and minds of the family of Isaac Asimov, exploring a way for his memory to be preserved in the programs of this institution. And Isaac Asimov was a friend of the American Museum of Natural History. Much of the research for whatever's our
that simplicity and
that's so beautiful.
Not a thing. Why is there not nothing when you come down to the fundamental question?
But we had an entire Asimov panel on that very subject where we
and realizes both is about 100, but to your eyes, it's really.
This episode.
Elon Musk thinks it's almost certain that we are living in a computer simulation.
there's a
ha ha ha. But
The Matrix is one of the most.
Okay, this is a discussion of standpoints of epistemology and perspectivalism. We're going to use as a case study August 30th, 1871. And the location in space and time is the general spatial point in the space-time continuum. It corresponds with the Olympic Northwest, Pacific Northwest, the Olympic Peninsula, most specifically with exactitude with the data points that are the bulk of Townsend, Washington. So this day, first we'll look at the day from the point of view of a few different people, 5 different people in town, and we're going to look at their perspective of how that day goes, and look like a logger, a Victorian woman, and a woman. Okay, now that's
Hello and welcome to Middlebury 5-0. I am your host, Officer Chris Mason, and with me in the studio today, I am very excited to have my old buddy, Matt Reddy. Welcome to the show, Matt.
glad to be here. Thanks.
And we've known each other for many a long year. We go way back.
Yeah, over 20 years.
Back to our misspent youth.
The exciting college days.
Right.
Yes.
We met at the University of Maryland.
We did during my my sophomore year, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is your second appearance on the show. So for those avid viewers of Middlebury 5-0, the die-hard fans who never miss an episode, your face will be somewhat familiar.
Yeah, they should immediately recognize me.
Yeah.
And
Well, probably they'll recognize you anyway from you being so famous.
Yes, I am.
Because you're a hospital commissioner.
I am. I'm an elected politician.
That's right.
Hospital commissioner in Jefferson County, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And been in office about 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a bit of a, I guess I was called an internet activist, but I'd say I'm an activist. And active in the Occupy movement before I was a hospital commissioner.
Yeah. So does it make you uncomfortable being around a police officer in uniform?
No, not uncomfortable. I think it creates, anyone that knows me as an activist, especially anyone that knows me from like the Occupy activist world,
Yep.
and other such activities and knows, that I'm starting my own podcast that is called The Mindful Activist, might be really curious what the heck I'm doing here with you and what the heck we're going to talk about, because there's a lot of police subjects that are very hot subjects in the world today in the U.S. So.
Yeah. Well, a lot of tension.
A lot of tension,
Right.
a lot of crazy events and confusion.
So if you were to think of us as archetypes, me being in uniform as a police officer and you the activist, those are very opposed archetypes as they're generally portrayed or thought of.
I don't know if opposed is the word, but
there's some tension there.
There's
some
tension, some interesting contrast, in our life experiences,
right.
and in the groups of people that we associate with, and Although I am also, my life is kind of a tension because I'm an elected politician and an activist, and so those two worlds themselves are kind of a strange contrast.
Do you feel your identity is split as a consequence of that? Do you feel yourself divided?
Not my identity. I really just feel I'm an activist who's using politics as just a tool to try to, change the world in a better way. But it is strange to have when you run for office and you're a public figure, you have this public image. And I know some people are completely unaware of my activist side, and so they have this just public image of an elected politician, this hospital commissioner, and
you seem so respectable.
Yeah, and so they don't really,
cut.
might not understand the activist part. So I feel very aware when I am bringing both of those things out. And kind of my activist side has been a little bit quiet the last 2.5 years while I've been in office. I've been trying to adjust to figure out what I could do as a politician. But it's starting to come back out. I'm starting to be much more visible in public with that side of me. And so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I often feel like there are these different aspects of who I am, and they collide in various surreal ways as I live my life as a police officer.
Sure. Do you have, what do you consider your identity? If you were to describe yourself.
I would say that it's a fairly fluid thing. I don't think of identity as a very fixed thing. Like, I think a lot of people imagine that there's a core piece of who they are that is just fundamental and unchanging, and that they shift in various ways, but that's at the perimeter of who they are. That's at the periphery. But the essential self remains pretty consistent throughout their lives. I don't really hold that view, at least as it applies to myself. So I feel like I have deeper threads, more established aspects of my personality, but even some of those have shifted over the years. So who I am, my identity, is kind of what I'm absorbed in, what I'm doing in the moment. And there have been different chapters to my life, for sure. And the most recent one involves me being a police officer, but that was not what I anticipated doing in previous chapters.
What if you were going on to something like Charlie Rose or something? He's going to introduce you.
I have no idea who that is.
Okay, I believe Charlie Rose is a very famous interviewer on PBS. He has a very nice table like this. It's kind of what you're trying to be. In
Thanks.
And
you have to go watch it if this guy's like a total.
No, he's it's like a talk show.
You could be insulting me and I wouldn't even know it.
This is true.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an insult. Everyone. It's a mark of real achievement to get on Charlie Rose. He interviews politicians, and he does entertainers. He'll interview anyone. But it's kind of like going on a David Letterman talk show, except he'll interview you for I think an hour sometimes, and he'll really go into stuff. But I'm so curious, if you were going to be interviewed, would you want him to be like, this is Chris Mason, he's a cop? Is that what you want to hear? He's a cop and he has a family. Or would you want to be like, because you were sort of like a poet artist at
I
some
am,
points.
I
You
am,
know,
yeah. And sometimes I share my poetry as a police officer.
Yeah, on the show?
Well, generally not on the show. That hasn't come up. I could do that. I could do a poetry show one day.
That'd
That
get
would be
great
awesome.
ratings. Yeah, cool. Love that.
That would draw the crowds in.
Yeah, I think probably most of the police department, everyone there would be really, transfixed by that.
They would. They would. Yeah. Well, I started sharing my poems on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, an official Officer Mason Facebook page, and one of the things that I do with that is put up poems. Sometimes they're my own poems, and sometimes they're other people's poems. And I did get some feedback from other police officers within the department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They liked it.
We'll just leave it at that.
Well, it's mostly limericks, right? That's mainly what you.
Yeah, 30 limericks really is my specialty. That's really,
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
You're very good at rhyming.
That's right. Yeah, so my poetry tends to veer towards the existential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my experience, you veer towards the existential.
I do
At least that's-
somewhat.
I mean, we did meet as philosophy majors.
We did.
And
Yep.
so most of our early history is philosophical conversations about the meaning of life and how we are sure one day you're going to be a cop and I'm going to be an elected politician. That was
Yeah,
kind of,
I think that was
could see
basically the gist of it.
We knew it all the time.
It was the writing on the wall.
Yeah, that's definitely what was going to happen.
So speaking of the meaning of life, what's the meaning of life? Yeah, I mean, after all those philosophical conversations, mincing around in the woods of Maryland in the wee hours of the morning, contemplating life and your place in the universe, and all the things that you've learned after that, which, I mean, obviously that was the most fertile part, when you were spending time with me, but
the
probably
richest.
you picked up a few things since then as well.
That was really the only time in my life I was really alive, and since then I've been sort of like a zombie.
Just a slow death, yeah. But now you're feeling a little more vivified.
Well,
It's
I'm
like
with you.
reanimated,
So now,
yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, recently I've sort of been, I'm in the process of publishing a book that sort of goes on to some of these lessons I've had over the course of my life, and I still basically believe, sort of as I did in college, and sort of in the spirit of like Henry David Thoreau, that life is about happiness, and that really is what every person. That's your fundamental challenge: is to figure out how to take the vessel that you're in and take it on a journey that helps you grow and flourish and be satisfied and happy with your life. And I think if you do that, you will. You'll help yourself learn, and you'll do things, and you'll produce things that will be good for the world, and you'll help other people be happy.
Right. But that's not the goal necessarily. Like your personal joy is that.
Well,
and then if other people are made happy along the way, then so be it. But
right. I mean, the goal is not to make other. Yes, the goal is.
Like, that's not intrinsic to it. You're just thinking like.
I just think it happens.
As part of the process
Yeah,
of making yourself really joyful and enriching your own life and being.
Yeah. It's like
as
you're
full a person as you can be. That the people around you will experience some of that joy and be drawn along, be drawn into it.
Yeah. Well, and actually, it's evolved beyond that too. I found that. What makes me, that really gets me excited and
really gets the juices.
Yeah, and really inspires me is
I
really
like juices.
You like
probably use that word a lot
okay.
over the course of the
Yes. What really gets my juices going is looking at the world at large, and really looking at the state of basically, happiness of people all over the world, and looking at that like a problem that I sort of find as a personal challenge. To how can I affect that? How can I influence the way the world at large works, whether just in the U.S. or beyond the U.S. Really, I mean, in fact, I'm more inspired. I sort of look at all the misery in the world and
all of it, every shred of misery.
And so I sort of there's misery in the U.S. There's miserable situations, but there's places on Earth that are really miserable. I mean, there's like and that's the type of stuff that we don't really like to say out loud. The horrible stuff that's happening in these war-torn countries and parts of some of the poorest nations on Earth.
Right.
Unspeakable things being done to women and children and men, of course. But I mean, I see that as it's like I want to figure out how do we make things better in wealthy countries like the U.S. and then how do we get our act together so much that we really are as a country, as we interface with these really impoverished or war-torn countries, how do we really become a positive influence, that we are like we infect them with positive things, with really like elegant, rational, democratic principles and structures that we're really like helping spread good ideas that teach respect and teach economic and political decision-making systems that actually help these places become better.
I mean, a lot of people would argue that we don't have a particularly good track record at attempting to accomplish that, because certainly the U.S. in the past has tried to make the world a better place by imposing its will upon other countries. You don't think that's been the goal?
No. No, the US.
You think it's this bunch of evil people that are really just trying to make the world more miserable? You don't think they're
I think
spreading democracy to other countries? You don't think that I mean, as a stated goal, but you don't believe that that's what they're actually trying to do, is democratize other countries. I'm thinking like back through the the 50s and the 60s and the 70s.
No,
when the U.S. was tinkering with other governments and taking out leaders that were.
No, I mean, if you look at. I mean, you got to look at like who is in charge, who's in power in the U.S. I mean, I have a video I put on my website that sort of describes the power structure in the U.S. like this pyramid, but not like a pyramid like this, but like this like it's almost like a sharp squeezed pyramid and
very spiky.
Yeah, it's almost like, and so to get up into the
kind
power,
of pyramid that you would really not want to fall on.
Yeah, like a
very
bad
much not
thorn.
So.
It's more shaped like a thorn.
Right.
And to get up in the power structure there, I mean, we have to. I mean, if we are honest with ourselves about how the political system in the U.S. works, it's not really a democracy. It's a very corrupt, money-driven system. It's like if you want to get up high in the political system, it's all about money. Who can you get to give you money for your campaigns? And probably some illegal money transactions are happening, but even without that, you need massive donations to become powerful figure in the political system, and that means to get up here, you're talking to corporations and wealthy people, and the only reason they give you money is because you're promising to do something for them. And so it becomes this like constant negotiation and quid pro quo situation to climb up that ladder. And so, I mean, it's an ugly game, and I think the people that are drawn to play that game and to really get up into the powerful positions and that are good at that game, I think it's naive to think that they have these amazing motivations to help the world be a better place. They're playing a game that helps themselves, and they enjoy power. And I'm sure some of them care about people and care about society and the world, but power is a corrupting thing. I mean, the whole phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, even if it doesn't always do that, I think 60 to 80% of the time it does, and that means 60 to 80% of the people in power are pretty corrupt, and they're the majority over the ones in there that are trying to do noble things. So it's a mess. I think it's the way the U.S. has been making decisions about how it interacts with the world has been largely driven by the self-interest of the people in power.
Right.
So,
you see, I think that a lot of those people are motivated, are driven by ideology as well. Like, I don't deny what you're saying, like, even without getting into that and contradicting any of that. I don't think that ideology is necessarily opposed to that. I think that it's perfectly compatible with that and would even add drive, add motivation to those other impulses. So I would presume that most of the people who have attained power, who have been really good at grasping power, who have been able to climb that slippery pyramid with the really nasty pokey point, ideology is a part of their makeup, a part of their frame. And when they look at themselves, when they assess themselves, they think of themselves as fighting for the good, as fighting for a better world. Now, I'd argue that often that's misguided. Like Imperial Britain, for instance, when it was spreading its influence across the world, subduing the savages in Africa, I think a lot of those people perceived themselves as spreading civilization to these far-flung, remote locations, and that being a very positive thing, that they're helping them to become more British, more refined. So it was, when we look back on it, when we look back at the spread of imperialism, it seems really horrific, the massacres that took place. And it to our sensibility, to our modern sensibilities, it is horrific, but I think a lot of the motivation was to do good and make the world a better place, to have a positive influence. So just bringing it back to that initial motivation that you were talking about, you know, when you were describing your vision of combating the misery around the world, making the US more enlightened, a more beautiful place, more of a beacon of, you know, hope and positivity, and being able to spread that to other nations. It's hard not to think of that in imperialistic terms. It's like all the models that I have for imagining that come from, you know, the CIA in Nicaragua, or England in India. Yeah, that's the framework I have for a nation trying to make another nation a better place.
Right. Well, I don't think I don't necessarily think it would be by the nations doing it, right, but the pockets of wealth. You know, it's like I think that's one of the problems with these pyramids and climbing these pyramids of power is once you climb up it, you now have because you spend so much time climbing this power pyramid, you have an interest in keeping this power pyramid basically in place, keeping the U.S. as a nation state, and keeping it as an identity, protecting it from, I mean, that's a lot of what happens when you're in power. You're thinking, what can I do that's good to protect my country at the potential expense of other countries? So for me, I look at it as the wealthy people in the world need to be thinking about how can we make the world a better place. It doesn't matter what nation you're in. And so one of the things I think can happen is that that we can use the internet, which has connected the world in ways that it's never been connected before. You know, in the history of humanity, the last 50 years, we have suddenly created a world where people all over Earth can communicate and connect and potentially start making decisions together in a way that it was never possible before. And I think if we figure out a way to do that better, then we actually can just sort of start creating a human decision-making matrix or structure that is completely new, completely separate from these power pyramids that are all over Earth. We can create this really broad decision-making power structure that could have a lot of influence. You know, not necessarily tearing down these other pyramids of power, but maybe actually able to tell these pyramids of power what to do. You know, if there was, say in the U.S., if everyone or the vast majority of the people in the U.S. were actually connected online and able to really, instead of relying.
I wonder how many dead one-planet civilizations there are out there in the cosmos. Maybe they're among us, I don't know. Yes, it's funny, the universe appears to be 13.8 billion years old, 4.5 billion years old. You know, in another 500 million years or so, the sun will expand and probably evaporate the oceans and make life impossible on Earth. Which means that if it had taken consciousness 10% longer to evolve, it would never have evolved at all. But I think this is one of the great questions in physics and philosophy, is where are the aliens? Maybe they're among us, I don't know.
Do you think we'll make contact with aliens within the next 50 years?
Well, that's a really tough one to say. So, and what it suggests is there's this great question, it's called the Fermi paradox. Like, where are the aliens? Like, if there are so many planets out there and the universe is almost 14 billion years old, why aren't the aliens everywhere? And this is one of the most perplexing questions. If there are super intelligent aliens out there, they're probably already observing us. That would seem quite likely, and we just are not smart enough to realize it. Any advanced alien civilization that was at all interested in populating the galaxy, even without exceeding the speed of light, even if you're only moving at, say, 10 or 20% of the speed of light, you could populate the entire galaxy in, let's say, 10 million years. Maybe 20 million years max. This is nothing, you know, in the grand scheme of things. What are the important steps in the evolution of life? How do you decide that anything is important? I think the lens of history is a helpful guide here. Over time, things that are less important kind of fall away. What are the most important elements in the history of life itself? What would any intelligent species say, oh, those were really important items? Well, there's obviously single-celled life, multicellular life, plants and animals. The animals, you know, things going out of the ocean onto land, advent of mammals, consciousness. There's about maybe 10 or so big ones on that list. And on that list will also fit the extension of life to multiple planets for the first time. Extending life to another planet is a huge quantum leap. You have to go hundreds of millions of miles across an extremely hostile environment to a planet which is completely unlike anything you've evolved to live on. And that's just really an extremely difficult problem. In fact, I think it's an impossible problem without the advent of consciousness. So consciousness is a necessary precursor for that. Consciousness, it's the next step, actually, because you really kind of need consciousness to design vehicles that can transport life over hundreds of millions of miles of irradiated space to an environment that they did not evolve to exist in. basically, if it took an extra 10% longer for conscious life to evolve on Earth, it wouldn't evolve at all, because it would have been incinerated by the sun. Wait, and that window is open, and we should do it now. Thank you. Thank you.
Here's the thing. Do you think that they would want us to know about aliens?
With honestly, I think I would know if there were aliens.
I would hope so. That's why I'm asking you.
No, nor are we seeing signals from any other solar system or anything like that.
How often do you think about it?
None, zero.
Zero?
Yeah, where are the aliens? Yeah.
Those fuckers.
There are a lot of aliens, and they're equally terrifying.
How much time before there's regular travel back and forth to Mars? Like a real civilization on Mars.
If the spaceships from Earth stop coming,
No.
you're screwed.
One day you can go to Mars. Just keep doing your homework.
We would want to have. We can give you saints, philosophers, scientists, great politicians, anything you want. Just tell us, what kind of human beings ought we to breed?